Hello, gentlemen. This is Tudor Leonte for ComingSoon.net. How are you today?
Very good, thank you.
It's such a pleasure to meet you. Stephen, my first question is for you, and I would like to hear, how did you come up with this project at first?
Well, it was offered to me, a book called SAS Rogue Heroes was offered to me. So I read that and was just immediately intrigued and astonished at the true story, what really happened and what these young men did, and they were very young. And I couldn't resist it. I had a bit of a personal connection that my dad was in the 8th Army, so he fought for the British Army in North Africa during these campaigns in 1941. I'd never been able to find out from him what it was like. He would say, we just used to play cowboys and Indians. So I felt that researching this project would sort of help me find out what that experience really was like for him.
What is it that audience loves about rogue heroes?
Well,
still Stephen.
We hope, in the UK, the response has been phenomenal. I mean, really phenomenal. So the reviews have been fantastic, and just, you know, you get a feeling in the air just by talking to people about it, because it's been out for a while. Lots of people have watched the whole thing. It's pretty much the strongest response I've ever had to a TV series. And so, so, you know, it's such a pleasure. And hopefully the reason for it is it's real characters, but also it's fun.
I was referring more in general to rogue heroes, you know, not just the series, but rogue heroes, like rogue characters. And, you know, following up on that, it also seems that you in particular love rogue heroes, Tommy Shelby, David Stirling, and even Diana Spencer, if you want.
Yeah, I think, you know, there has to be a reason to write a story. You know, you don't really write stories about people who obey the rules, because why would you? So therefore, I think to begin with, the impetus to write something comes usually from someone doing something unexpected, something considered to be wrong, something innovative. And I do think, you know, since Robin Hood and way before Robin Hood, since the Greek myths, we're all looking for someone who does the thing we only dream about doing.
Connor, this is not your first historical drama show, nor the first time you portray a character who existed in real life. I was curious to hear what research you did to identify with David Stirling.
I think it is the first character I've played in real life, unless there's someone out there I didn't realize they're a real person.
Perhaps the man working at the lighthouse. Am I wrong in saying that he existed?
You know what? You're absolutely right.
No worries. I think he exists, but still, at any rate.
Yeah. Sorry, your question was what? Sorry.
Your research on David Stirling.
Just the book, really. Reading Ben Macintyre's book, as Stephen mentioned, it was a complete goldmine of fascinating stories, and I mean that was all I really needed to read about, and obviously Stephen's scripts were all I needed to read about to get a mold for the character. All the other stuff that I read things like David Stirling's autobiography. They were just sort of embellishments and bonuses. I watched old videos of people like Oliver Reed and Peter O'Toole, and I sort of just tried to step outside of myself and get out of my own way as much as possible. A lot of my performances have come from sort of my own self, I think, as most actors' performances do. But this one was really about stepping outside and stepping into another person's shoes, and it was a great challenge that I really enjoyed.
And following up on your answer, is it getting easier to relate to your characters even when they're so distant in time?
I suppose, yes. I think I'm never, obviously, I've never been through anything that David Stirling has been through. We've lived completely different lives. We grew up in completely different times, but I can relate to feeling frustrated, even on a minor scale, at a situation that I've been in. And I think those are the experiences of those that I did draw upon in my own life, of which there are a few, that I called upon to try to relate to that character. And just the kind of frustration. I mean, I can definitely be belligerent and cynical, which I think are two traits that David Stirling has. But ultimately, I think, you know, prior to the answer I just gave before this, there were definitely ways in. There were ways to relate to him.
Stephen, Stephen, there is something about this series that reminds me of Casablanca. Is that one of the sources you took inspiration from?
Oh, I mean, you know, you're talking about the absolute classic depiction of the dilemma of war, I think. You know, not just the way it looked and the way it was performed and the way it was shot, but just that central thing, the central dilemma of the characters is so strong. To even be in the same neighborhood or something like that would be fantastic. I'm not saying that it is, but certainly War in the Desert. If you're doing War in the Desert, you're also doing Casablanca.
Connor, part of your character's journey is to establish his identity beyond his father's name. What can you tell us about that journey for your character?
I suppose it is this, I've spoken about this before, but it's kind of an unquenchable thirst for acceptance and validation. But I don't know if he ever really got beyond the events that the story tells. I think, you know, it's difficult because there's a lot of his personality is crying out for acceptance and attention, and a lot of his anger and resentment is obviously directed towards those that are above him, which I suppose parallels his own personal relationship with his father. Of course, there is that direct storyline that we see in the first episode, or that it's shown to us that is a point of his character that holds him back. But I think as the story goes on, he even more so tries to emulate his father. I can't say, you know, just because of what happens in the story, I can't spoil anything, but just little mannerisms and things like that. You know, he always has a pipe and things like that. And the first time we see his dad, he's puffing on a great big pipe and so on. He's definitely trying to, almost through, I suppose, traumatic reenactment, step back into his father's footsteps, maybe to figure out who this person was a little bit more. I don't know.